For years, human rights organizations and humanitarian organizations operated with distinct roles. Human rights groups focused on defending rights through research, advocacy, and holding accountable those responsible for protecting or violating them. Meanwhile, humanitarian organizations worked to meet urgent needs, regardless of whether these were legally defined as rights. This division was complementary. Human rights organizations addressed systemic issues, while humanitarians focused on immediate, ground-level needs, ensuring protection wherever people faced crises. However, the relationship between them wasn't always smooth. Human rights advocates often criticized humanitarian organizations for being charitable or focused on relief, as though there was something inherently wrong with these approaches. Some argued that alleviating suffering might weaken the protests of communities whose rights were being violated. Over time, this tension led to a synthesis, the adoption of a rights-based approach to humanitarian action. After all, the needs being addressed often reflected fundamental rights, and incorporating human rights principles could enhance the effectiveness and impact of humanitarian work. But what does a rights-based approach actually mean in this case? For some, it's a framework that integrates human rights standards and principles into every stage of humanitarian action. For others, it's about putting people at the center as rights holders rather than merely beneficiaries of aid. In practical terms, this approach has two main dimensions. First, it strengthens key humanitarian practices, including some already in use and others less common. These include empowering individuals, involving them in decision-making, establishing mechanisms for feedback and complaints, promoting accountability, and striving for sustainable outcomes. Second, it incorporates a perspective typical of human rights work. This means identifying the specific right at stake, the person entitled to it, and the duty bearer responsible for upholding it. Alongside meeting urgent needs, this approach raises awareness and empowers individuals to advocate for their rights more effectively. This approach bridges the gap between humanitarian aid and human rights, combining these efforts where it makes sense. This can be particularly effective in contexts where systemic change is necessary. However, focusing solely on immediate needs remains valid and essential in many settings, and both approaches play critical and complementary roles. Using a rights-based approach strengthens the link between needs and rights, ensuring a more respectful and dignified relationship with people. It also provides practical tools and strategies to address challenges effectively and work toward lasting solutions.